I've already sunk 30 plus hours into Dead Island 2, so here's a list of 35 tips and tricks I wish I knew before I started. They'll save you hours of frustration, make your character level up faster by getting you more XP more quickly, get you loads of money earlier in the game, and even explain some features the game doesn't even tell you about. And we'll be talking legendary weapons too, all without giving any story spoilers, so you don't need to worry about that. We're also sponsored by Zotac today, and I'll talk more about that later. Let's begin. Keys, locks, and secret areas. If you find a key and have no idea what it unlocks, don't spend ages searching randomly hoping you stumble on it, because sometimes the thing you need to unlock is actually pretty far away from where you are. Instead, when you pick the key up, pause your game, go into your inventory, and look at the description of the key, because it's going to give you a little bit more precise info as to what you're actually looking for. There's a similar trick you can use for safes. When you find a safe in the world but you don't have the key for it, don't worry, because the game marks the safe on your map from that point, so you can really easily get back to it later. Then when you find a key in future and the description in the inventory matches the location that you have marked on your map, you know that you can put the two together and get what's inside. In some cases, the right key can only be found by killing a certain zombie as well. So if you are looking for a key, don't just run around an area but leave the zombies alive while you do so, because it might be that the zombies themselves are key to you finding the key. God, that was awful. I'm so sorry. Sometimes you can get around the keys and the locks completely. A lot of us are used to locked areas only being accessible one way in games, but in this, there are occasionally alternative ways to break in. They do often have a small downside, like setting off an alarm, but if it stops you having to faff about with a key and a lock, then it's worth doing. The flip side to this is some areas look like they should be able to be gotten into, or they look like they're going to have a key somewhere, and so you get tempted to search for the key so you can get in. But these are actually quest-locked areas. You might just need to progress the main quest a tiny bit, or it might be that you just go there for a side quest. So don't make the mistake I've made of looking for keys for stuff that the game literally gives you during a quest later on. If you missed the tutorial hint for these fuse boxes, you might think that you need to search the area to find a fuse and then bring it back to the box to open the door. But actually, it's vendors that sell fuses, but you can only carry 3 at a time. So every time you go back to a vendor, always stock up on the max number of fuses you can afford, so you've always got a spare handy in case there's a door that you really want to open while you're exploring. Sometimes vendors run out of fuses, and this just means that you need to go to a vendor in a different world location that still has lots of fuse boxes ready to be fixed, and they should have a couple of fuses that you can buy. Progression, side quests, and exploration. You don't actually need to look at things to loot them, and I wish I knew this before I finished the game, but I learned it afterwards. You actually just need to stand near to items, and as long as you're near enough to them, you can be looking the opposite direction, but the pickup button will still actually be on your screen. It'll just be in the corner or something. So you don't need to sling your head around like a cat following a laser pointer trying to pick up all the scrap off a shelf. Instead, just wedge yourself against the shelf, spam that pickup button, and you'll slurp up all that loot. Your flashlight never actually runs out of battery. It just turns itself off every now and then when you go in a really bright area. So anytime you go back into the dark, just remember to turn it back on. It makes life a lot easier. Blueprints are used to craft specific mods and upgrades for your weapons in the game, and they are very often found next to workbenches. These workbenches can actually have multiple blueprints that they will host throughout the game. So in Emma's Mansion, for example, you'll go back there several times, and it's worth checking the workbench each time to see if there's a new blueprint that has spawned on it for you to pick up. Vendors also sell different blueprints, so I recommend always buying all of a vendor's blueprints in case they restock with others in the future. And different vendors have different supplies, so always check every vendor you find in case they've got new blueprints for you. This side quest in Beverly Hills is super easy. You'll be able to get progress on it as you progress through the game, and it's going to give you a bunch of XP, and you'll unlock a new vendor with exclusive blueprints. So even if you're just focusing on the main quest, I think as soon as this quest becomes available, you should head on over and get it started. At workbenches, you can track parts that you need for certain blueprints that you can't currently afford because you just don't have the resources. And then while you're exploring the world, those resources will be on screen at all times, so you can see how many you have. You have a live counter. The flip side to this is that that counter actually gets kind of annoying kind of fast, in my opinion, and you are going to have to go back to the workbench in order to untrack it, so just keep that in mind before you start tracking everything in sight. I'm going to completely avoid spoilers here, but I just want to point something out so that you don't miss it in the game, because it only happens once. There's going to come a point in the game where Jimmy Montana tells you he spent 9 seasons on the badge. He's then going to storm out of the room, and you're going to jump onto a walkie-talkie. When that finishes, keep listening to the electronics in the room, because there's a really funny radio over from another one of the houses in the area, and I think it's worth listening to, and I don't want you guys to rush out of the room and miss it. While you explore, you're going to start finding these scope things that say server offline. Don't make the mistake I made of thinking that means you need to reboot the server yourself somehow, and then waste a load of time trying to do that. Because actually, these are just tied to a quest, and it's pretty late in the game, so when you first start out, just ignore these so you can interact with them later on. The most powerful weapon in the game. The most powerful weapon is none other than a Zotac 4070 Ti graphics card. Okay, that's a joke, but the new Zotac 4000 series cards are super powerful and have a whole list of features that sound like they would be amazing for slaying zombies. Hear me out. Things like Ice Storm 2.0 advanced cooling and freeze fan stop, and all new Firestorm utility. Like, the elemental mod jokes are writing themselves here, and it's super stylish as well. It's got an air optimized design, Spectra 2.0, which means it's got RGB lighting with a 3-pin RGB header, and a lovely metal die cast backplate with even more RGBs on it. It's got all that stuff and plenty more, and all of it is supporting NVIDIA's ultra efficient Ada Lovelace architecture. So if you want to pick one up for yourself and boost your zombie slaying performance, you can click the link in the description to purchase. And of course, thanks again to Zotac for sponsoring today. Money and resources. There is a limit to how much of each item you can carry. I'm not talking weapons here, I'm talking things like fabric, metal parts, zombie parts, all those kinds of scrap. But if you continuously sell the ones you don't need, you'll get loads of money and you'll be able to continuously pick them up in the world, so you don't feel like you're just wasting opportunities to get more stuff. In the early game, if you go into your inventory and take a look, any gray item you have more than about 25 of, you can sell the rest of. And it's something like 30 to 50 bucks per part. So you go through your items as you progress through the game and keep on selling those down to just what you actually need, and you'll find that you're earning thousands and thousands of dollars from this. Another early game tip here is to actually buy some stuff back from those vendors as well. Specifically, the blue items, synthetic fibers, alloys, stuff like that, are going to be in shorter supply when you're in the early game, but they get really common later. Now, to really start building your wealth in the early to mid-game section, you need to start selling your weapons. Do not keep on scrapping them. At the beginning, scrapping them is totally fine. You do need those resources. But as soon as you've got a loadout that's kind of working for you, and you have a little bit of float to work with in terms of resources in your inventory, you're going to want to jump straight into selling all those weapons. This is going to earn you so much goddamn money, to the point that towards later stages of the game, one single item you find just from a random zombie kill could be worth $5,000, $6,000, or $7,000. Extra special ones might even be worth more than that. And your upgrades are going to become more expensive as the game progresses too, so you need to stay on top of things by selling stuff that you don't need. However, as the game mentions in the early stages of the tutorial, if you scrap a weapon with upgrades on it, then you'll get the resources back from that. And so there's a little bit of a choice that you need to make here. Do you sell the weapon and get money, or do you just scrap it and get all your hard invested resources back? And the answer to this doesn't have to be one or the other. You can go to the workbench, individually remove certain upgrades, get the resources back from those specific upgrades, and then still sell the weapon and still get loads of money for it. You will earn less, so a fully decked out weapon might be worth twice as much as a weapon with 0 upgrades, but if it means that you get to keep some really valuable resources that are hard to come by, then it's worth doing. You might also be able to find some extra stuff that you can sell in your lost and found locker. This will fill up with weapons that you forgot to pick up or didn't have space for on your travels through the world, and it's really worthwhile checking back on it every couple of missions, just in case there's some stuff in there that you can either scrap, sell, or use. Weapons, characters, and combat secrets. I got through the entire campaign before realizing that if a weapon drops onto the floor, you can hold down the pickup button, and instead of going into your inventory, it will equip straight into your hand, swapping out with your currently equipped weapon. You can cancel a heavy attack which you've charged up by pressing your reload button. So on PS5, that's square. You can also end your fury early by pressing the same buttons you used to activate it. This will save some fury meter so you can get back into it sooner next time. Also, energy drinks boost your fury meter. And med packs instantly remove any status effects that you're suffering from, so if you've just been set on fire and you're worried that it's going to burn through loads of your health, the sooner you activate the med pack, the better, because you'll obviously get your health back, but you'll also stop yourself from burning in the first place. Med packs will not save you from full damage though, and this game does have full damage, and it will pretty much insta-kill you if you fall from too great a height. Another thing that will insta-kill you is if you throw a battery at a zombie and then pick the battery up while it's sparking, it looks like something you could just throw back at them again, but no, it instantly shocks you to death. This is also a reminder to remember that environmental hazards are almost always present in the game. If you're on an especially difficult boss fight or something like that, you might find that you just need to take your tunnel vision off the boss for a second, and you might be able to find something that you can activate to turn on a flamethrower to attack the boss for you, or things along those lines. If you're having trouble with a certain boss, or just a certain enemy in general really, there's a really easy way to get information instantly on how best to take it down. For some reason this is hidden in the collectibles menu, but you then want to go into Zompedia and find the enemy type that you're having difficulty with. As you rack up your kill count on this type of enemy, you'll get more tips about how to be more efficient. And some of these are really obvious, but some might surprise you. For example, loud noises trigger the transformations of mutators early, and you can harvest extra zombie parts if you maim Crusher's arms before killing them, which they're also weak to, by the way, and which will stop them from doing their overhead smash and flail attacks. Things like this you'll pick up during gameplay, but certain more specific tips, like blunt damage being super effective on screechers, is something that might be a little bit less obvious. Runners are weak to sharp and bleed damage, and spiky zombies are weak to explosive damage. Now, a tip I massively recommend you do throughout your game is to actually check what damage type your weapon is, and to check its hidden trait. For example, if we open the details for these crescent blades, you can see that it's got sharp as its base damage, and has frenzy as its damage profile. Here's another example. This bat has the bulldozer damage profile, and that means that heavy attacks are always crits. I've put perks on to boost critical hit damage because I know that they're gonna be happening. And with skilled, every kill I get means that my heavy attacks get even faster and even more powerful, which makes this a pretty deadly combination. You learn all of this just from looking at the details page. This is also where you'll learn exactly how legendary weapons apply their special characteristics. But don't make the mistake I made of looking really hard for legendary weapons earlier in your game, when in fact you're going to get your first one at the end of the campaign. Also, activities that are going to grant you extra high tier loot, such as for example those fuse boxes, should be spread out through your playthrough so that you don't lose all of your opportunities to get high tier loot from a crate or a safe later in your game when you're a much higher level. You ideally want a pretty even distribution across everything. On the whole, trying to level up as fast as you can is a good idea, and one of the ways that you can incrementally add to the XP that you're getting is by successfully completing dodge counter combos. Normally, you get about 15 to 20 XP per kill, but if you complete a successful dodge counter combo and the zombie dies, you can walk away with 35 XP or so. If you do want to level up faster, I also really recommend you do those side quests that I mentioned in that one Beverly Hills house, because there's multiple quests that that woman can give you. You can also permanently make your character stronger by going to the challenges menu. If you go to the bottom to the zombie challenges section, you'll see that these are across all your accounts. They're not just tied to one individual character, and progress on these will give you boosts to all the stats that are available to you really in the game. And because all of these challenges exist, not just the ones in the zombie challenges section, but all of them overall, I highly recommend varying your playstyle through your game, just so that you're doing new things and unlocking new challenges by virtue of playing. Found yourself relying on a certain weapon type, a certain elemental damage? Switch it up. By doing so, you'll progress much faster on these challenges, and they're fun to do as well, because it really motivates you to play in different ways. Now, no matter how much you do change your playstyle, there's one thing you can't change mid-game, and that's your character. I strongly recommend testing out a couple of characters on different save files just to see what their voice is like and how it feels to play them before committing to playing the entire rest of the game as them. Because to be quite honest, some of them have kind of annoying personalities, and you want to make sure that you gel before you proceed. During character select, you'll also notice the attributes table, and I've done a bit of actual scientific testing on this and found out that a lot of it you can actually ignore. Some of it's important, but agility, for example, sounds like it's going to affect all of your character movement, but in a test I did, it only affects walk speed, not sprint speed, and seeing as you're always sprinting in this sort of game, it really doesn't make sense to care at all about agility. So take the attributes with a pinch of salt and focus more on the innate skills on that character select screen. If you want a more in-depth look at the different characters and you need a bit more help choosing which is best for you, I've got a complete no-nonsense breakdown which is linked on the screen right now, so you can click on through.